Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to a new podcast called Transition to New Terra. And basically, we are inviting guests on to give us their thoughts about the transition from a world in which humanity has lived in a thought control matrix in which we believed for millennia that we are alone in the universe to a world in which we not only get to know that we have a galactic family, but we get to interact with them as well. So, Aaron Kuhn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jock. Honored to be here, and I'm excited. Thank you for having me on.
Well, let's have a little bit about your personal journey. Like when you were young, what was it like growing up?
When I was young, so I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. Um, I grew up in a very Christian family. Went to church every single Sunday. Um, when I was around the age of 13, I want to say, I started getting involved in like the youth group at my church and kind of like really became like a very devout Christian around that time, like 12, 13. And my brother was, I kind of was always following the footsteps of my brother as well. He's a few years older than me. And I was like a super Christian kid, but I also loved music. And I started playing guitar when I was 11 years old. And I started like, I skateboarded and stuff, played sports. And was super Christian. So that was my childhood slash teens, and then started playing in rock bands when I was 18. My first band when I was 18, senior in high school, and then for the next 15, 16 years, I played in bands. But so yeah, when I was 25 years old in 2012 is when I called my awakening, where I started actually questioning my own beliefs for the first time, really ever. And one thing just kind of led to another. And I started doing my own research for the first time ever on starting with the Bible and my own religious beliefs. Realized much of what I'd been told and taught was not true and was not even in the Bible, or the way that it's translated and interpreted for me was not correct when I actually looked into it for myself. But then I realized like the vast majority of Christians have never looked into it themselves. They're just taking someone else's word for what it says, right? Or for what the truth is without them ever going on their own journey to truth. Um, so I did that, and I had the dark night of the soul, I had the ego death, I had the like destruction of my whole like what I thought reality was and who I thought I was kind of happened. And then I rebuilt myself from an authentic place, you know, really for the first time. And I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater though, which is what a lot of people do, right? A lot of people jump from Christianity, they either get burned or they have this like, oh, wait a second, um, there's lies here, and then they throw it all out and they go the atheist. Oh, there's no God, there's no divinity, there's no soul, there's no greater or anything. It's all just random, blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't do that because I knew I had experienced the divine. I knew when you experience something and you know it, you just know it at a deep level, right? But I knew that what the box I'd been handed was not the ultimate truth. I knew there was a lot of lies and a lot of man-made manipulation and lies in there, but there was truth in it as well. So I was like, all right, I know there is like a greater intelligence, God, source, whatever you want to call it. Um, but you're not really taught in modern day Christianity that you're a part of that. You're kind of basically taught you're separate from it, and it's this external force that you have to like worship and give your power away to, and you're just this worthless nothing without giving your power away to. And it's like, no, it's the exact opposite of that. You are that. You're connected to it. Everything is. Um, so you, therefore, you are inherently of infinite worth, and you're an eternal being that it's having a temporary experience, you know. And I realized like it's not just this one life and then it's you die and then you go one other place for all eternity. It doesn't make any sense, right? And that the light bulb went. I was like, well, yeah, that doesn't. Why am I just now realizing that doesn't make any sense? Why am I just now realizing the concept of just heaven or just hell is all there is? That doesn't make any sense, you know. And that if you don't believe the right things in a finite period of time, you're gonna go to this horrible place. Like it just. And then so when I did my research and I realized like, oh, it's obvious now to me that that comes from the man-made control system that, you know, Yeshua did exist and he created this movement, but there was a threat to the system, so they had to like usurp it into their control system, and they did that through the Roman Catholic Church. Catholic just means universal, so it was the universal church, and then they mixed it with the paganism at the time to appease them as well. They had to like appease everyone while also creating a control system that was based in fear and uh keeping everyone stuck in fear and like giving their power away, right? So that's what they did. The Council of Nicaea, you know, they left out the books that were the empowering ones, and then they mistranslated things and you know, did all these manipulations to, you know, create, you know, a whole system where you have to confess your sins if you want to go to heaven to this priest, you know, and you have to do good and be, you know, keep everyone in fear and trying to like earn their way to you know, something, blah blah blah. And then all the wars that have happened, you know, because of it, and the Crusades and all the rest of it. And it's not just Christianity; it's all religions that are mind control systems. That's the same thing, you know. It's all religions um, to keep humanity from waking up to their true power and really connecting to their true selves and growing spiritually. You know, it can grow spiritually in religion, but it's a box, and then it's like only at a certain level, right? And then you're stuck. But the system wants you to stay in fear, stay at the low vibration, focus on the negative, you know, of it rather than the positive. So it's like, yeah, you can focus on the positive in religions, but then even then you're stuck in a box and you can only go so far, right? So yeah, basically I realized all that. I through the internet, through YouTube, which was way less censored at the time. It was way more on YouTube back then. And I found David Wilcock, I found David Icke, I found like Dolores Cannon, Project Camelot, Alex Collier. Um, I found a YouTube channel called Spirit Science, which went into all the spiritual and metaphysical concepts, and I learned a lot through that. And Greg Braden, and just go down the list, you know, Jordan Maxwell. And I would just binge watch all of these people because it was almost all that information was brand new to me at the time, and I was fascinated by it. It resonated so strongly with me at the time. I was like, yes, this is truth. Like I just knew it, you know, at this core level. I was like, this is truth right here. You know, this is the greater reality that I've been like kept from in this box my whole life until now, you know. And I had no one to talk to though about any of that stuff at the time because I had like my Christian family and friends, but then I had my atheist, agnostic bandmates and friends also that none of them wanted to hear about any of this stuff, right? It was like it was either crazy bullshit or demonic to the Christian narrative, right? Um, but those are all just programs. Those are all mind programs to keep you from information. You just write it off as evil, demonic, or you write it off as BS because someone else told you that information doesn't fit in the box that you're handed. So it must be one of those things. You know, you can just see how it's a mind program. It's like, well, did you come to that conclusion on your own through your own, you know, journey of trying to actually find the truth, or did you know, no, of course not, because I truly believe when humanity starts doing that, that's when they wake up, you know, and this stuff will resonate when you're not locked into a mind control program. But so I thank God I got out of it, and I was able to find this information and wake up, and grow spiritually. And I spent about 5 years doing that on my own because I had no one to talk to about this stuff. I could have sought it out. You know, there's groups I could have sought out locally, but I had so much going on. I just didn't even think to do that for whatever reason until I hit a point where I just had to connect with people. You know, I just hit that point where I'm like, I have to connect with people that are on this level that I can talk to about this stuff. And that was in 2017. I wanted to go to Contact in the Desert that year, but I couldn't quite afford that one. But then I was kind of following like David Wilcock and Corey Good at the time. I was watching their show Cosmic Disclosure, which at the time was on Gaia. And Corey and kind of like the people he was working with at the time put on this conference in the Mount Shasta area in August of 2017. It was a little bit cheaper. I could afford it. And I drove all the way from St. Louis all the way to Mount Shasta, which is a long drive. Went to that conference, and that conference changed my life. I like the people I met there, the experience, it was just so amazing. And all I wanted to do from that point on was to keep connecting with like-minded, like-hearted people, right? And keep going to these types of events. And I just wished like I could just stay. I'm like, this is what the world's supposed to be. You know, it's like I got a glimpse of New Earth, basically. I'm like, this is how we're supposed to live. Like those 3 days there, how that was. I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be right here, not working a 9 to 5 job you hate and living all separately and uh paying taxes and paying to live on the planet you're born on, which makes no sense, and a government telling you what you can and can't do, and all these slave systems that on the planet. You see like it's like the tribal living is like kind of how it's supposed to be in my opinion, because you're like this soul family that's all living together and helping each other and supporting each other and all that, living off the land, living close to the earth. Like that's how it's supposed to be. um so yeah, anyways, that was the first conference. Then I went to Contact in the Desert 2018, which was amazing, but it's this massive, there's like 4,000 people there, and I'm like, all right, this is cool to experience once, but I like the smaller, more intimate, soul family feel kind of conferences. And then, so then after that, I went to the sequel to that first conference. They changed the name. It was Eclipse of Disclosure, the first one, because it was during the solar eclipse in 2017. Then there was no more eclipse, so they changed it to Dimensions of Disclosure. It was in Loveland, Colorado the next year, and that's where I met Tyler at. Tyler was there with his dad, and I didn't know him at the time. And I was just hanging around talking to people like you do at a conference. And Tyler and his dad were in the little circle of people that I was talking with. And we all start going our separate ways. And Tyler and his dad are about to go on their own little hike just on the property of the ranch that we were on. And they're like, hey, we're about to go on a hike. You want to go with us? I was like, yeah, sure. And they asked me where I was from. I said St. Louis. They're like, they were from St. Louis too. So it was a total synchronicity. We're like, what? And yeah, then the rest is history. So then Tyler and I started hanging out after that. A few months later, we started the podcast. I had a Facebook group that I was running called Journey to Truth. So that's where the name came from for the
Oh,
podcast.
okay.
That's where the name came from. I had a Facebook group called Journey to Truth. And we were like, we needed a name for the podcast. We just had the idea to do it, and we had no idea what we're doing. And we're like, let's just call it Journey to Truth Podcast, since I already had that group, and Tyler was kind of like contributing to it a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
So we messaged about 5 or 6 people that we had met at these conferences. That was Tyler's first conference, actually, the one I met him at. That was his first. That was my third. Messaged a few people. They all agreed to come on as guests. We made the decision to do it once a week, every week, and try to stay consistent. And we've stuck with that ever since, and it's just flowed ever since. The universe has supported us. It's just been like magic ever since. I don't know how we were like, how did this even happen? We don't even know. It's like somehow clearly this is what we were supposed to do, because the universe has just supported us so much since day one. It's felt like, and now we're doing our own conferences, as you spoke at our last one, and your talk was amazing. Your talk was one of our favorite talks of the whole conference, by the way. So thank you so much. And yeah, now we're doing documentaries and webinars, and it's amazing how far it's come. When you're on your mission and when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, the universe will support you, and it'll feel like it's just flowing. That's how in my opinion. So yeah,
Well,
that's
was
kind of
it?
my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it sounds like your journey was initiated and maintained by this, by your tapping into the resonance that you felt with information, with people.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I hit a point. I spent 5 years kind of in isolation, not isolation, but isolation as far as like this information, where I didn't have anybody to talk to about it or connect with on that level. And it was almost like, I guess you could say it was like an incubation period, I feel like for me, where it was almost good in a way that I was like taking it in without distractions and, you know, growing on my own with it. But then I hit a point where it was like, okay, well now I've come as far as I can on my own, and I need to connect with other people now. And that was the next step, you know. And and that's helped me so much. Yeah, so much. And it's like there's just there's no substitute for connecting with other people on a deep level, and on that level. There's just no substitute. Like internet's great, reading books is great, watching videos is great. It's awesome, but you have to at some point get out there and connect with other people and join together, and it will change your life. If you haven't done it yet, it just will, and then that's like all you'll want to do probably once you do that. And that's what happened to me. So
Well, I think we can inspire each other. I know that I'm inspired every
mhm.
day to keep going on the mission because, it's we're living in this, we're still living in the matrix. We're watching it crumble right now, but it's still tough going and for all of us.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, because we're even if we understand with our new ideas about our existence that we are more than the slaves of the wage system that we were taught we were,
Yeah.
even if we understand that intellectually, still we're living in that world on a fundamental level day to day. And
Right.
so to have to deal with that, it's dispiriting. And so then you come upon people who enliven your spirit and who inspire you
Mhm.
to keep going on the mission that with through the resonance that you're talking about is your mission. Um,
Right.
in the Gospel of Thomas, which is a book that's outside of the
Yes.
Bible,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Amazing. Amazing book. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was 17, I read a book called The Mustard Seed by Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. One of the quotes that was my favorite from that book that is left out of the Bible is, if you bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will save you. If you
Mm.
do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you.
Deep. Yeah.
It's talking
That's
about
so true.
you. It's not talking about somebody up there. You
Right. Some external force or God that's going to judge you externally. No, it's you. Right. Within you. So to me, that's like you could replace seed within you as your true self, like the true you, which is your soul. Because like this body is not you. This is a temporary experience. The real you is having. It's kind of like if I were to walk into a movie theater and then suddenly I forget that I had a life outside, or I forget that I'm even in a movie theater, and I think I am the movie on the screen, right? And then I'm terrified of the movie ending because I think that that me is going to end, or I don't realize there's a greater me outside of that. It's like, no, that's a temporary experience the real me is having. I'm going to have lots of other experiences, and it's going to, help the real me grow and expand, and um and it's almost like yeah, that makes sense to me. It's like if you can't connect to the real you while you're living in this temporary experience, uh, you're you're lost basically because you think you are this temporary experience. You think you are the programs that you're programmed with through society and through everything else. You think you are just you think all the five sense reality is all that exists, and you're basically completely asleep. And that's a path that it's like you're gonna just be it's gonna be rough, you know. Like it's gonna it's not going to destroy the real because the real you cannot be destroyed. Anything that is real cannot be destroyed, and that's it's like, well, how do you know what's real and what isn't? Well, anything that is real does not decay, cannot be destroyed. It's eternal, and that's why the real us is eternal. But the temporary, the less real us, which is like this experience I'm having now, can have a really rough time, and can get into a lot of trouble if it doesn't wake up, you know, if it doesn't connect to the real me, if it lives very disconnected. And I can basically, and powers can take advantage of that, which is what's happening now on the planet, where they feed off of all of us that are asleep, not connected to the real us, and they're like created this system that they're able to parasite off of us because we don't know any better, basically. And but it's also about frequency. So like, you know, where your frequency is at is what you're going to experience. It's science, really, right? So like Tesla said, everything is frequency, energy, vibration. If you understand that, that's you'll understand everything. um so it's like, you know, I hear people that have had like near death experiences, for example, that you look at, they talk about their life and they were just living in complete fear, despair, you know, anger, hatred, all these super low vibrational, you know, they're just very at this very low place in their life, and then they have a near death experience where they basically they do die, and they experience this hellish reality because that's where their frequency was at, because they were a match to that frequency. um but luckily they were able to come back, and then it woke them up, and then they started raising their frequency. um but if you don't wake up, you're going to just keep experiencing the frequency that you're at, because it's kind of like a mirror, or it's kind of like attracts like, right? So it's like the things you experience externally is really ultimately, in my opinion, a mirror of what is internal, is what you're vibrating at internally. It's like everything everything is your teacher, right? Everything is teaching you something. It's a matter of like realizing that, learning the lessons, growing from it, and then you won't have to keep experiencing a certain reality because you've already mastered that. It's like you've already mastered that grade. You're going to the next. Um, but yeah, sorry, it was a long-winded answer to to that, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like uh suffering is necessary until it's not, I guess you could say. It's like, and it's not necessary at all, but if suffering is happening, it's trying to wake you up, it's trying to teach you something. But if you're not getting it, you're going to keep experiencing the same thing over and over and over again until you get it, until until you're able to move past that. um
Mm.
it's kind of like you know um if if I'm about to walk off a cliff, or if I'm in a car driving and I'm about to drive off a cliff, and there's somebody in the car punching me, trying to wake me up to the fact that I'm about to drive off a cliff, and I'm just like, ow, stop it, you're hurting
Yeah.
me. He's like, you're not getting it, I'm trying to tell you to turn around, you're about to drive off a cliff, and I'm not getting the message, and then you're going to go right off the cliff, right? It's like, so it's trying to wake you up to something. It's just a matter of you have to wake up, you have to realize that and get it. So it comes down to you. It's not about, you're not a victim ultimately. There's no such thing as a victim ultimately to anything outside of you. All the powers within you, you have to tap into that, you have to wake up to that. And I think that's what's happening right now on the planet, even though things seem really chaotic and really crazy, and there's a lot of evil. It's not actually a good thing because the evil is being exposed because we're seeing it, because it's so obvious now
Right.
that, you know, all these agendas are like trying to force themselves upon humanity so obviously right now, and all these evil people and beings and stuff. um it's like, well, to me, I would be more worried if it wasn't that obvious, if it was like smooth sailing, because then they're still behind the scenes controlling without people realizing it, and without anything rocking the boat and anyone seeing the man behind the curtain, right? And without humanity waking up. Well, this is all waking us up. This is all allowing it to be seen and experienced so we can wake up to it and take our power back. Take our power back and be like, we're the ones in control here. We have the power. We're going to create the reality we want to create, not what you want us to create. You know, so that's what I see happening. But we still see a lot of people that are still sound asleep, that's where they're at. If they're, you know, you hear the concept of NPCs or soulless avatars.
Mm.
um I wouldn't doubt if that's the truth, because you see a lot of people, it's just like, man, how are they still not getting it? Like, how are they still like, it's like there's nothing going on, you know, they're not seeing, they're not getting they're not connected to any true self at all, at all. It's like they're just a program running, you know, you can just see it. um and however that works, like that's just where they're at, you know. But those of us that are connected in some way to our, it's like we're going to become more connected. We're seeing the agendas, we're seeing what we don't want clearly, and then we're able to now take our power back and create what we do want. Stop feeding into a system that is obvious now, that hates humanity, that is feeding off of humanity, um, and is using us to power itself. Well, if we can wake up to that, we're going to say, okay, well, no, I'm gonna power myself, and I'm gonna create something beautiful, something I actually want to create, instead of, you know, you can only be manipulated if you're asleep, right? So humanity's waking up. We're in a very chaotic time of transition. It's like the name of your show is so spot on, because that's it. It's like we're transitioning right now from the old world that's been here for a long time of control, manipulation, slavery, to the new earth that is humanity waking up, taking our power back, and creating a reality that we want to create for ourselves without slave masters over us telling us what to do. Because we're not slaves. They've just tricked us into thinking we are, right? Uh, but as soon as we wake up, it's game over, and that's what's happening right now. So they're desperate. They're clinging. They're trying to cling to any power they can. They're throwing Hail Marys. They're, you know, they're trying to lock it down, but they can't. It's already game over. So they're basically just making a lot of noise on their way out. And you know, let's start creating right now. Let's start living authentically right now, creating what we want to create now. And the system's going to collapse on its own. Just stop feeding it. Stop giving it your energy, and it's going away on its own. But we have to. It doesn't mean don't look at it and don't acknowledge. You acknowledge the truth and reality of what's happening, and then you say no to that, and then you say yes to what you want to create. And it really comes down to that. And take your power back, love, you know, stay in the love frequency, and connect with like-minded, like-hearted people that are at that level. It's really that simple.
Well, I think a lot of people, from NPCs, as we might call them, to people who are awake, really awake people, even those people might feel like they don't really know how to tap into their own power. They don't really
Mm-hmm.
know what you mean when you say take back your power, tap into your
Right.
power, step into your power. Alan Watts,
Yes, love
who
Alan
gave,
Watts.
yeah, he's great, right?
Yeah.
He basically single-handedly gave us the Taoist wisdom over here in the West. And he said that we envision ourselves like a person who's in the Western culture sees himself, his self, as a separate body, a skin encapsulated entity
Mm-hmm.
that is separate from the universe, separate from
Everything
nature,
else.
right?
Right.
As you spoke about earlier. So he says that the skin is actually, he and the Taoists say that the skin is a bridge. It's not a barrier. It's a bridge to nature and all the universe. So when
Hmm.
you talk about, correctly, I think, talk about how we are the universe, we are the divine,
Hmm.
we can envision that in a scientific way by saying, what is the skin really? Well, the skin really does need to breathe. It's breathing in oxygen, right? It's breathing out and breathing in. If you wrap a body in cellophane, the body doesn't like that. It needs to
Right.
breathe because it's part of all. So if we need a scientific way of looking at it to say what is our power? Well, our power is the universe because we are the universe. Then we
Hmm.
can say, oh, the skin is a bridge. It's not a barrier. I'm not
Right.
alone in a hostile universe. I am part of all that is, and that's our
Right.
power. Is all that is.
Right. 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 Exactly. It's like nature shows you how it works. But if you just observe nature, it's like, well, we need oxygen to live, like you just said. We breathe it in and then we breathe out CO2. Well, if we are dependent on the air to breathe, how are we separate from it? Like, does that make sense? Because like you said, if you're locked in uh, a room, an airtight room with only so much oxygen, you're going to end up suffocating because you're shut off from the rest of the world
Right.
and the air you need to breathe. Uh, but then we breathe out CO2, and then the plants take in the CO2 and give us oxygen. So it's like that you see that relationship we have. Um, what we what we do to nature affects us because we are dependent on nature. We're not separate from it. We're a part of it. Like uh and yeah, it's like it's so obvious when you actually just observe things without a preconceived notion of what you think reality is, or you're told things, you're programmed, and then you're trying to observe things from that programming. But if you can just set down any programming, anything you're told of what to see or what something is, and then you observe, um, naturally you will know this, in my opinion. You just see it, you experience it, right? And this is what, like, that's why the tribes and the native indigenous cultures, they experienced the oneness with nature, and they had the wisdom from that, and they passed it down to generations, and they were living in tribes that were connected to each other and to nature, and that's powerful. And that's why do you think the cabal and the negative entities wanted to get rid of as many of them as possible, because they had all the wisdom, and they were living powerfully connected to themselves and to nature and to each other. Well, they can't have that, right? Because
Right.
that's a threat. So that they're like, well, if we're going to control humanity, we have to get them all to think they're all separate from each other, think they're separate from nature, think they're just this isolated being that, and then you're either worshiping an external god that's also separate from you, that you have to try to be worthy enough to, and feel all this guilt and shame if you're not, and all this. And what does that do? That keeps you in fear, it keeps you powerless. Or you have to be atheist and not believe, throw all that out and think that this is all just random and meaningless, and it's just this one life and that's it, and we're all separate, and that just breeds nihilism and also fear. So they both lead to fear, keep you locked in fear, right? And keep you locked in powerlessness, when the truth is there's some truth in both, but then ultimately both of those are complete lies, and the truth is outside of both of those boxes, where it's what you just said and what Alan Watts talks about all the time, that and the Tao, and what these ancient, way more ancient than the religions, wisdom, and teachings tell us, which is we are all one. We're not just one with each other, but we're one with everything, with nature, with everything that exists in the universe. Um, and that what you do to anything outside of you, anyone or anything outside of you, you're also doing to yourself, because there's no separation. And ultimately, that's what karma is, in my opinion. Um, it's like you think you can get away with hurting someone outside of you, but it's stupid, because you're just hurting yourself, and it's gonna come back to you. You're gonna end up experiencing what you caused on something else in some way, shape, or form, because there's no separation. So it's just a universal law.
Right.
Until you get that lesson, again, kind of goes back to what I talked before, until you get that lesson, and then you ultimately have this deep knowing of oneness, that you're one with everything. And then why would you hurt yourself if you know at a deep level all is one and you're one with all? Why would you ever? You wouldn't, right? Like, you wouldn't even dream of trying to have power over people outside of you, or hurt or enslave people outside, um so all the cabal and all the Draco and all these negative powers that are going around enslaving other beings, and killing and harming other beings, it's just stupidity, because they're going to experience, they're just accumulating all that karma that they're going to have to, you know experience themselves in some way, shape, or form. The universe, you don't have to, you know it's kind of a relief, because it's like, well, we can do what we can do, but ultimately God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, will do the judgment, you could say, on that. Will deal with that, and we don't have to worry about it. Like, someone harms you, don't worry about getting revenge on them. The universe will take care of that. That's karma. But you
And
can
it,
you can respond. You can only control how you respond to that, and you can be like, okay, well, how can I learn? What can I take away from this experience? How can I grow from this experience, even though it's seemingly negative and hurtful? I can That can be a huge growth opportunity. And how can I love more because of it? And it's like, what's on the inside of you is what's going to end up being created on the outside. So if you have a planet full of a whole bunch of people in fear and in powerlessness, and in anger and hatred of each other, which is ultimately just means you're afraid. It all comes down to fear. Well, you're going to create systems that reflect that. You're going to create a world that reflects that, and that is kind of the world that we've had for a long time. And then the psychopaths take advantage of that, because that's what they do. Right? The people that want power, they're going to rise to the positions of power naturally, because that's what they want, and they're going to take advantage of everyone's fear and control and manipulate everything. And that's what we've had for thousands of years. But now we're moving out of that. We're waking up. The technology that was meant to enslave us and to further those agendas is actually being flipped around and used to wake us up and empower. Man, it's a beautiful thing. It's amazing, like what we're doing right now here with the internet. um so it's like the universe, even the things meant for bad, meant for harm, meant for negativity, uh will get used for good. Ultimately, will be used, everything ultimately works out for the good, in my opinion, of all, even if it doesn't appear that way temporarily. Ultimately it does. So that's, if you want hope, like, that's the hope right there, is that it always, in the end, it always works out for your good and benefit, and love always wins in the end. God always wins in the end. So there you
well,
go.
Alex Collier, I know you're an Alex Collier fan, and so am
Oh
I.
yeah, love
I
Alex Collier.
yeah, he's great. I've been listening to him
Mhm.
since 1990 something. He did Defending Sacred Ground, and he says
Nice.
that the reason that we were given, or that 10 of our strands of DNA were deactivated, and that we only have that we're running on only
Mhm.
two, is
Mhm.
that the thought control matrix creators knew that we are a very clever species. We have the DNA of the gods in us, of the ET races, the advanced ET races who created us, the benevolent races who created us,
Mhm.
benevolent or sometimes maybe not so benevolent, but it's always a question of POV on whether a race is good or bad. But anyway,
Right.
he said that because we are so clever, just with our two strands of DNA, they knew they had to create a thought control matrix that was all encompassing. Because if they had a crack in the matrix, we'd see it real fast and we'd get out of the matrix. So they had to
Right.
make this incredibly I mean, once we look at it from the outside, foolish and silly matrix of
Right.
nonsense
Right.
to just keep
All
us
encompassing.
locked in because we are
Right.
so creative. We are so we have you have the genes of very creative races in us, and we're going to
Hmm.
bust out so that
Yep.
to keep us locked in as the slaves to generate the energy that they needed and the goods that they needed, the gold that they needed, whatever it was
Hmm.
they needed to keep us our thoughts locked down,
Yeah.
and so they created this incredibly complex bunch of nonsense that we call our world,
Hmm.
or that we call the Matrix after that movie came out. The
Yep.
Matrix. Now we have a kind of a good name to talk about what we're in, and that's what this podcast is really about. Is about having guests on who can talk about what it's like to live in the Matrix, what it's like to break out of the matrix, to slowly ascend, to quickly ascend, to day by
Hmm.
day, go up each rung of the ladder and find out a new truth, as you're saying, a new thing that resonates with you, and then
Hmm.
try to help people come up the ladder with you,
Right.
with your information just by sharing it, because we're naturally that way. What the ETs who created us are that way. They're benevolent races by and large, and we have that benevolence in us. We want to share this information as we crawl, struggle slowly out of the matrix. We're
Hmm.
shouldering out of the matrix like a plant out of the earth. And we're going, oh, here's the sunlight. Oh, Plato's cave is the perfect analogy. Um,
Yeah.
you know, so it's like it's a beautiful awakening to see if we step back from what we're doing and we look at what we're doing and we see us trying to help people out as we ourselves are being helped out by someone else. It's really
Hmm.
beautiful to me.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. Um, yeah, and going back to what you were saying about they had to kind of like shut us down so much so that they could even control us in the first place. And they had to, like the 12 strand DNA, shut off all but just two, shut off 95. They tell us 95% of our DNA is junk DNA, which
I
makes no
know.
sense. This is like it's hilarious. Like nature just makes junk, and 95% of your DNA for no reason is just there and doesn't do anything. Like, it's a joke. Like, it's hilarious. No, like, no, they switched off 95% of our DNA so that because we're supposed to already naturally tapped into all our multidimensional abilities and psychic and telepathic and all the clairs and uh telepathic, as I like to call it, where you just like feel what someone else is feeling automatically when you're around them, right? That's how it's supposed to be. And you can turn these things all back on, but it takes work because they've been shut off, and we have to now reactivate them. But they shut them off so that they could control us. Because if all those things were on, you're not gonna control humanity with their DNA all turned on, right? It's not gonna happen because you can't lie to us. We know what you're thinking and we know what you're feeling. We know what each other is thinking and feeling. We can connect
Right,
with each other on a much deeper level just naturally that way.
right.
Where not only that, just with humanity, but spirits, spirit guides,
Hmm.
angels, other dimensional beings, ETs. You can go out and do a C5 or go out and connect with ETs on your own right now.
Mhm.
But people don't do this because they don't know that that's even an option, right? Like, we're not taught this stuff.
Right,
And you can even telepathically communicate. There's so many people that have had telepathic communications. They've had face-to-face encounters. They've had, all these, you know, encounters with ET, and not just ETs, but other higher dimensional beings and all Sasquatch and all kinds of stuff, right? Well, think of how if humanity all knew this and was all doing this, you couldn't control them either. So it's like they had to cut us off as much as they could from anything that was like us, at these tapped in at these higher levels are able to connect with these higher beings, right? And keep us locked in. They want us locked into the five senses only, and that we think we are the five sense reality. We think we are the five sense body, and that's it. And just completely shut down. And that's the only way that they can control us. And then they feed us their lies from that place, and then hope we just keep buying into it and keep running on the program, keep feeding, and then they can manipulate our emotions, and then they that feeds into the network, create wars, do their rituals, keep, and they, like the Matrix, like the movie says, they turn humans into a battery that feeds the system, that powers the system, and that's what they've been doing. But the second we wake up to the fact that, like, hey, we're way more, we're than we're told here. Wait, there's way more going on than we're told here. It's game over, and that's what's happening right now. And yeah, it's like you look at the school system, you look at just all the systems in society, and we're not taught all the things that matter and all the real information, right? And it's crazy when you wake up to stuff. You're like, oh my god, we're taught just complete lies, and we're not taught all the things we should be being taught. It's insane. It's all backwards. It's all completely inverted, um, and it's done on purpose. It's not just by accident. It's all, it's done from a top down pyramid level, very meticulously on purpose. And that's what you realize, like, oh, we're in it, like you call it, the thought control matrix. That's a perfect description of it, because that's exactly what it is. It's a thought control matrix. They want to control your thoughts, keep you locked into that. And government, the word government means mind control. Govern, control, mental mind. uh like they're telling us, they're even telling us what they're doing constantly. It's all in your face. So we're waking up, we're taking our power back, and we're ascending, the planet's ascending. And um I don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but I do know that the awakening is happening and the ascension is happening, and however that plays out is how it's going to play out. And whoever wherever you're meant to be is where you're going to be, at a certain point, because everyone's at a different place in their path, right? Everyone's at a different point in their journey. And um you can't throw a kindergartner into college, immediately. You can't, if you want to look at it like that. Like, people that are at that level, they need to experience a lot more of 3D reality, but the planet we're on right now is moving rapidly into a higher dimension, in my opinion. And if you're not at that level, you're going to have to go somewhere else, however that plays out, but the controllers are like, they're desperate to take as many people with them as they can. And that's, in my opinion, the reason for all the agendas playing out with the jabberoo, and the chips in the brain, and the, hacking of the DNA and genes, as they talk about openly now, and all these types of things. It's like they're desperate to get that rolling and get as many humans as possible on those things, so that they can lock them down into fully locked down into 3D and stay a slave in their slave system, right? But um, you know, that's why it's like, well, that's your choice. Everyone has a choice, whether you're realizing you're making that choice or not. So, we're waking up, but it's like some people, they're just not ready to wake up yet. And that's where they're at. And they're going to experience what they need to experience, in my opinion. And they might have to learn some really, really hard lessons, which is going to suck, but that's the path they chose, and you can only do so much. At the end of the day, everyone has their own individual, is their own sovereign being, and is making their own choice. That's what it comes down to, right? We're all making our own choices. You can't force anyone to do anything. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. All the sayings. Um, but love is more powerful than all of this. So if you can connect with as many people in love as you can and show them love, and if they're not receptive to that, then they're not. That's their choice, But the ones that are ready, you can plant the seeds, and you can try to connect in love, and they'll be receptive. And uh, that force is more powerful than anything they can throw at us, in my opinion. So, you
Right.
know,
Because it's letting the natural frequential universe that we live in flow, as opposed to
mhm,
blocking the free trying to block all that. It's so much energy to block the natural flow of the frequential universe, you know.
exactly, exactly, nailed it.
Well, you know, Elena Denon is channeling this guy Thor Han from the Pleiades. Thor Han's younger brother Jen Han is in a sun building school on Era, which is a planet that circles Taygeta. I don't know if that's how you
Mhm.
pronounce it. People have different
Yeah,
pronunciations for that star.
Tegeta, yeah, however you pronounce it.
But it's pretty cool that there's a guy who's in a sun building school out there, and we are still thinking that suns are nuclear furnaces because that's what we were
Yeah,
taught in academia. But in fact, they're
no.
plasma light bulbs that are
Mhm.
either natural, or maybe they can be also be built. Well, I mean, we still have to figure this out, but somebody's in a sun building school. Cool. But anyway,
Yeah.
Thor Han, the older brother, who Elena's channeling, he talks about the holographic universe, and he says that
Mm.
holograms, as we think of it, are light shows that fake us out, but that's not what the holographic universe is. The holographic universe is a frequential universe
Hmm.
that is geometrical in nature, and these geometrical patterns are what we see in the world. So if there's a sun, it's a
Mm.
geometrical pattern. The planet's a geometrical pattern of
Yeah.
frequency. That and so
Right.
these patterns manifest as what we think of as solid objects, but at base they're really just an intermeshing, interlocking, really cool looking
Yeah.
geometrical frequential object that's there. And
Right.
then we also are that. A tree is that.
Right.
Everything we see is this free this pattern is
Right.
in Alan Watts and the Taoists talk about the dance of patterns, and
Mhm.
how at the base of it everything is a, a dance of pattern. And so
Right.
when the scientists try to find out what the stuff is, you know,
Hmm.
the what the atom's made of
They
and
keep
all.
going farther down and down, and they're like, wait a second. It's all just vibrating energy and frequency. Like you just
Right,
said, there is no solidity here. It's an
right.
illusion.
So that's kind of cool. And so once we realize that the universe is a playful dance of geometrical patterns, and we
Hmm.
awaken from this idea that we're just billiard balls bouncing around and like hitting each other with sticks because we're pissed off that day. Instead of
Right.
that, we go, hey, it's a playful universe of patterns and it's a dance, and we are part of that dance. Let's tap into
Mhm.
that dance and stop blocking that dance
Right.
with our
Right.
ideas, with our thoughts, with our the thoughts that we've been given by others who say that they're our authorities. Then we can begin to feel the power that we naturally have.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, it's proving what you just said. And it's proving what the ancients have said for going back thousands of years. And it's like we forgot all that, and now science is like discovering it again. But so much of mainstream science is locked into their own dogma, and it's like they're still trying to somehow say that, oh no, all that's pseudo, even though they're what they're propagating is the real pseudoscience. Um, but quantum physics is literally showing this, that hey, at the deepest level, there's no solidity. It's all vibrating energy. It's all sacred geometry patterns, and I mean, cymatics. Look at cymatics. That's proving that you play a certain frequency, and the sand or whatever the substance locks into a freaking geometric shape, and it's all sacred geometry, and like you can see it, um and that's what we are just vibrating energy. That's what everything is. um that's what the whole unit, like you just said. So it's, well, then what's real? Well, we're experiencing consciousness, and that's why scientists will never, they're by in their paradigm that they're locked in, they'll never figure out consciousness because they're trying to find it from the outside in, right? Like it's like trying to, like you've heard the analogy, trying to taking a radio and trying to find the music inside the radio. It's like that's not how it works. It's picking up a frequency and then decoding the information and playing what it's decoding, and that's what, and David Icke talks all about this constantly. Is like this is all just decoded information, that's frequency that's being picked up and decoded by, your DNA basically, and by um and it's and then that's the picture that you're experiencing from your brain. But that's not the base core of reality. That's just an interpretation, right? And it's like, um, but yeah, it's all frequency. Like it's all, like Tesla said, it's all uh, energy, frequency, and vibration. And then you get deeper even with that. And we're like, well, what is energy? Well, light and energy. Light energy is light. Well, what's light? Well, it's consciousness. It's the consciousness of source, which is what we're made of, which is what our consciousness, my consciousness, your consciousness, everyone who's watching this, it's the same consciousness. We're just these individual radio receivers picking up on the same consciousness and then living in a different point of awareness within the one great consciousness that is God, that is source. And then we're having our own little experience, but we're all the same consciousness. At the deepest level, we're all the same consciousness. We're all the same one being, one consciousness, one energy. It's just one. It's a energy. It's an infinite energy. You could think of it as, if you want to, like, what is God? Well, it's infinite conscious energy, in my opinion, to put it simply. And it's having experiences, so it can have experiences of the all that the everything that it is. Because how can the one infinite source that is infinite, what does infinite mean? It means infinite. It means there's no boundaries you can place on it. It is anything you can think of is a part of that. So how does that experience the all that is? Well, it has to create different points of awareness to have experiences in the first place. And so what source did was it exploded out into all these different points, and then it was able to have different experiences and experience itself, you could say. um and yeah, I mean, it's basically just one big play that God is having, you know you could say, of what is all that. Well, it's just a giant play that God is having, and it's experiencing itself through it, and it's expanding itself through it. If you want to get even deeper, it's like, well, it's it's having experiences so I can keep having new thoughts and then have new experiences because it's had these experiences, and it's just a never-ending expansion, you could think of it as. Anyways.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, the Indian philosophy is the Indian, East Indian philosophy
Mhm.
is that the universe is at play. And they have
Yeah.
this word, Lila, Lila. And Robert Pirsig, who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, he wrote a book called Leela. It took him 17 years after writing the first book, which was a massive bestseller back in the day when I was young. It took him 17 years to write Leela, and that is an amazing book too. And I might even say it's better than the other one, but they're
I'll have to
both.
check that out. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll have
it's
to check
it's
that out.
it's a really good book, and it just talks about he's a character in his own novel, like he was in the first novel where he's riding his motorcycle across the United States with his son. In
Mhm.
this one, he's by himself on a sailboat going down the Hudson River Parkway, not Parkway, the Hudson River.
Mhm.
I lived in New York for a while, so that's why I associate
Oh yeah.
Parkway with Hudson River. He's going down the Hudson River in a sailboat, and he meets this woman he stops one night and he goes into this bar, this seedy bar, and he meets this woman who is ostensibly, to all accounts, a low quality person. And he brings her on his boat, and they have a low quality interaction, let's say. And he's telling you all the real stuff. He tells you the truth, and he says, but there was something about her that was the Dharmakaya light. He called it the Dharmakaya light, and this is all from East Indian philosophy. And there was a light around her that
Mm,
was high quality. So
mm,
he's talking about quality, and he's defining what quality is.
yeah.
Uh, and the Tao and quality are related. But anyway, so he says that although our culture would say that she's low quality, she's just this girl who meets guys in bars and picks them up, and
Mm,
there was something about her that was so dynamic that that's one kind of quality that he talks about. He says there's dynamic quality and there's static quality. So in a society, for instance, we have a university, which is the
mm,
buildings are the static, the positions are the static quality. You have this
mm,
university that's gotten to a certain point and it's set there. And you go, okay, but then there's the dynamic quality within the university, which is the professors who come in, the new professors, and they've got new information. And so
yeah.
that's what DNA is too. The chromosomes have the protein static quality that latch in, and then the dynamic quality is the genes within,
Mhm.
changeable, mutable. So we
Right.
have different combinations. So he goes, those things need to go together. Okay, well, you've got this woman that he meets that he calls Leela, because that's the word for play, the playful universe, because she's dynamic, she's playful, she's got something about her that is able to change him, able to
Mm,
affect him in this incredibly powerful way, even though the static vision of her that we would normally see from our cultural perspective is, oh, she's just this thing that's just sitting there doing nothing. No, she's also somehow this incredibly dynamic person. So that became the foundation of his book. Was just
mm,
this meeting with this random meeting with this woman as he's
yeah.
sailing down the river, and he's trying to put his book together on the sailboat journey. He's got these note cards and he can't figure out how to put them all together. He's got notes from every possible philosophy and religion, and she's the one that put them all together, because
Mm,
she's the embodiment of the playful universe. And he said that's what they were painting when they were painting the halos around the heads of saints. They weren't they were that was just a symbolic
mm,
representation of this light that came off the heads of these people who were full of dynamic quality. And
mm.
so in some
Interesting.
painters like El Greco, he said, captured the light without the symbolic halo. They just made the sky lighter behind the head. And that
Yeah.
light is what he saw in this woman, Leela, that he met in the bar. So to me, this is like, I wanted to have parties. When I read this book, I said, I want to have parties with people and we would just go through the book and read the book. But nobody wanted to have a party where you read a book about philosophy. They wanted to have a party
Right.
where you got drunk and listened to rock music. And it's like, well, that's one way to go. But can you come to my party and we'll talk about the dynamic quality and static quality? Because this is amazing.
That that is amazing. That's beautiful. There's actually a lot of ancient paintings and pictures of Jesus with a big circle around his head, right? So I wonder if that's the same thing that you're talking about, is what
Yeah,
they're
undoubtedly.
depicting
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah.
That's the halo or that energy that they saw that they were just painting. Um, and like you said, that's where the halo comes from. Um, that now gets interpreted as like, oh, an angel has a halo, and it's like, well, where did that idea come from in the first
Right.
place? Right. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's amazing, and that's like, it's it's such a good indicator of like society has its own like system of value, right? Of what it deems as like higher value and low value, and it sees everything in this through this one lens, and that's it. And then if you don't get out of that programming, you just think, oh, for me to be high value, I have to make a lot of money, work a certain job, have a certain status, drive a certain car, house, blah blah blah. Yeah. It's like, and you think that's what gives you value, and that's all. That doesn't mean anything. It's just stuff, it's just a program. And what really matters is what's on the inside. And like that woman is a perfect example of that. It's like, from society's perspective, she was worthless, or she was just low value, just almost worthless person. But that's just from that society, very ignorant perspective. But from the truth, which he saw, it was like, no, she's like so full of life and energy, um so connected to the greater energy, I guess you could say.
And what's interesting is that she didn't know her own value. She didn't know she was a
Mm.
dynamic quality woman. She
And
had
she didn't
no
even
idea.
know it. Right. There you go.
So I think there's a lot of people going through life, maybe the NPCs, maybe they have their antenna, their DNA antenna are transceivers that are receiving and broadcasting their own body, their own selves.
Hmm.
Maybe when they tap into the incredible power of the universe that is creating them in the moment, because as the Chinese say, the creation is continual. There wasn't one creation where everything was created and everything, and now God went back, took,
Right.
he did his creation
And
and then he took, a long vacation. So
right.
now, no,
And
the
he's
Chinese are
like,
saying
see
it's
ya.
everything is being created, like this tree is being created all the time, obviously,
Hmm.
right? It's creating itself through its own internal intelligence, right?
Yeah,
It's playful
exactly.
intelligence. So once people tap into that, I think they'll the dynamic quality of the universe that they are a part of, then they will be able to relax into it. Because I think that's what, in a way, that's what love is when we meet
Mm.
someone that who doesn't judge us and force us to be something they want us to be, and we can
Yeah,
just be the universe with them. We
right,
relax. I think that's the feeling of love is just a relaxation into the frequency.
right. Well, when you, yeah, and another way to put it is, the second you start putting conditions, it's not love anymore, because love is unconditional
Right.
by its nature. It just is. You don't love because it's not like, oh, I love you because you meet X, Y, and Z of my conditions, and now I deem you as worthy of my love. Now I will love you. Well, that's not love. By definition, that's not love. You can call love, it's not. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. True love is not conditional. It is not controlling. Con- Control by its very nature is the opposite of love. You know, uh, because why? Like, going back to what we talked about before, if you're one with all, why would you want to control yourself? What you're connected to? Doesn't make any sense. You don't. Because it's like, the more connected you are to the all that is, well, love is what I would say makes up, that is the energy that makes up everything. So the more you're connected to that energy, the less you want to control, the less you are demanding of someone else to meet your X, Y, and Z conditions, or you're gonna leave them or whatever. Like, you just connect on the frequency of love, and it's beyond it's beyond any of those mental programs. It's beyond ego. It's just connection on that level, right? And that doesn't mean you don't have boundaries, and you don't, you still, you have, uh you connect with like-minded and like-hearted other people that are at the same frequency as you. But there's going to be people you're going to run into that are at a different frequency. And self-love is love, because ultimately all is one. So when you love yourself, you also love others. But that doesn't mean you have to, this person who's like abusing me and harming me and saying nasty things to me or whatever, it doesn't mean, oh, I have to keep talking to them, keep hanging out with them, and keep being around them, and keep in a relationship with them because I want to be good and I love everyone. And it's like, well, no, because that's not loving to yourself.
Right,
That's you accepting abuse to yourself, which is not
right,
love.
right,
Because love does not, you can't make it all external and then say like, oh, these things that are harming me, I'm going to accept, because that's not loving to yourself. That's abandoning yourself, and that's not love either. So it's you have to have self-love, and then that by nature you will have those natural boundaries of, I can love you from a distance even though I'm not going to be around you anymore. I'm not going to keep supporting this anymore even though I can still love the people in that from a distance and pray for, and send you energy and all the rest of it. But I love myself, and I'm going to connect with other people that respect that, and that see the real me, and that love the real me, and that treat me with the way I deserve, and we all deserve. Um, but it doesn't demand that if you're in a relationship with somebody, it's not demanding of the other person. It's not setting conditions like you
right,
have to meet this standard or else, or
right,
I don't love you because you didn't meet no, that's not love. That's ego. And that's just a human egoic um program, basically.
right.
Because when you tap into real love, it's, you don't have to do that anymore. Like it's like you don't even have a desire to do it, to try to control anything outside of you anymore. And that's what I think the universe is always trying to get us to stop trying to control things. It's like, trust yourself, which is the universe. Trust the universe. Trust yourself, the true you, and stop trying to control things. And things will start flowing, and the things will come to you. It'll bring things to you, and then you'll just take that one step at a time without you having to try to struggle and control and manipulate things outside of you, and thinking, you're just in fear of like missing out, or not getting love if I don't keep trying to control things outside of me, which so many people, you see them stuck in that, right? They're always trying to control things, control people outside of them, and because they're not connected to that, you know. But when you are, you have no desire to do that anymore.
Well, Alex Collier has been recently giving us an interesting greeting between ETs, and this could be between a benevolent ET and a regressive ET, or between two benevolent ETs. It seems that the advanced races have a specific way, a common way of greeting each other, which is
Mm-hmm.
they bow slightly, not all the way down, but just they
Mm-hmm.
bow slightly, and they maintain eye contact. So they're bowing slightly, they maintain eye contact, and they say, "It is the manner and custom when entering my space that permission be asked." That declares your sovereignty to that being.
Yes.
Without that declaration, that being doesn't know that you believe that you are sovereign. So we
Right.
have been trained that to think of ourselves as slaves,
Right.
that
Right.
someone else has the authority over us, and we're
Someone else is the authority over me. Right. Right.
just little old me doing our thing and trying to please everybody. And so
Right.
we have to get out of this. And one of the best ways to
Mm.
get out of it, I think, is to memorize that freaking greeting that Alex Collier gave to us from the Andromedans, who told him to tell us what the greeting is when we start to meet our galactic family.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Yeah. Yep. That is amazing.
I mean, because as
It.
you're saying, in a love relationship, for instance, let's say you're in a romantic relationship, and you want to be you want to be perceived as a loving person, and so you're going to go, well, I have an urge to just let them run over me because I want to be loving and peaceful and stuff like that. I don't want to set up any
Mm.
boundaries because they'll think that that's aggressive. No, it's not aggressive.
And then it builds resentment in you, and you start resenting the other person because you're letting them consistently violate you and harm you
Right.
when they're not even realizing it, probably because you're not standing up for yourself. You're not communicating. Right. That's not
So,
loving to yourself.
so it's okay to be a sovereign being with boundaries that you've
Hmm.
set up,
Right.
right? And they're their sovereign being with boundaries that they've set up. Oh, when I'm working, I don't want to be disturbed unless it's an emergency. Okay. So you set up these boundaries, and
Hmm.
that's okay. In fact, not only is it okay, it's necessary to declare your sovereignty, because otherwise you're just a doormat. And
Right.
I think all of us have gone through a phase, and it might have been decades long, where we say, "I'm going to be a doormat for people because I want everything to go smooth."
Right. I want to rock the boat. I want people to love me and like me. What is that? What is that? That's you giving your power away to people, to other people, instead
Right.
of standing in your power. And it's you not loving yourself because you're trying to get love rather than being love. It's not about getting love externally. You are love, and it's about tapping into that, and then you live from love rather than trying to get love. It's a
Mm,
much different. It's like you really want to simplify. It's like, are you living from love? Are you trying to get love
mm,
externally? Right.
mm.
So many people are trying to get love, and
Ah,
you can't. It doesn't work that way. That's not love. That's not how it works. So you're never gonna get love externally. You live from love, and then you connect with other people who are also living from love, and then you're both are feeding. You're in the same love frequency, and you're feeding each other, and it's an upward spiral rather than two people trying to parasite off each other, trying to get love both from each other, not living from love. What is that? That's a downward spiral. that's that's the opposite. That's two people in fear frequency trying to get something that neither of them are tapped into, that neither of them have. You
right.
can't get something unless that's not how it works. But that's it's like we're almost taught that, though. So it's, again, it goes back to, we're taught the absolute inversion of the truth from
Mm.
society, that you got to earn love. You got to go out there and get it from someone outside of you, someone else,
Oh gosh.
something else. And doesn't work that way. That keeps you locked in to the fear frequency, so you can stay a slave and stay on that treadmill
Right.
and keep working in the slave as and feeding the system. That's why the system teaches you. You can see it so clearly when you understand the game, when you understand the system and what's going on here. It becomes like so blatantly obvious of why we're taught what we're taught, and why things work the way they work in this 3D matrix.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious. But then that's when you're able to say, okay, well, I came here to live in this system, but not of it. Like Yeshua taught. He's like, you're to be in the world, but not of it. Because you got it, you can only affect it by being in it. But then you live of the kingdom, the Father's kingdom, or really you could say you live of the true nature of reality, the true self, which is love. And then you affect this false system powerfully from living connected to your true self. And the more of us that do that, we're going to change the system like that, because
Yeah.
that's a billion times more powerful than anything in this false 3D matrix ever. Right.
Right.
So it's like it's a joke, when you wake up, the system's a joke. When you realize, like, oh, there is nothing to be afraid of. There is nothing that has power over me. It's all an illusion. Uh, all the power is within me, you know, and it's just tapping into that, and it's game over.
Well, we can feel the power of a tree, for instance.
Hmm.
The tree in the background right now, you can feel the tree tapping into the love energy of the universe, which is simply the consciousness energy of the universe. The tree's not trying to be anything other than it is not trying
Right,
to achieve something to please someone else.
right, right.
to get love. It's just being love.
It's just being right. Exactly.
So when we go out into nature and we're among the trees, we're in the forest, the power of the trees and of all of nature that's out there in the forest, let's say, is able to affect us in such a way that when we come back from the hour-long hike in the forest, we go, wow, I feel so relaxed and happy now.
Mm-hmm.
That,
Exactly.
that all the trees did was they're just living.
Didn't do anything other than be right. Exactly. That's the
We had that
power of
power.
them.
I mean, it's
Right.
incredible. So if we're like a tree and we go, I'm going to just, and that's what these gurus do. They're tapped into the love energy, the consciousness of the universe, which is all, and they
Mm-hmm.
just they're embodying the love energy. They're living in that flow, is able to affect thousands and millions of people
Right. Right.
powerfully, you know?
Right. Right. And that's a perfect testament to that. Exactly. And that's why it's so powerful, because that's they're tapped into the true power of the universe, which is their true self.
Hmm.
And they're awake, they're very awake on a deep level. And that's so much more powerful than anything that is not that, that like than this like false matrix that we're programmed to stay in.
Right.
So and that's why do you think they throw everything at us to keep us, because they have to, and they're that afraid of us because they know we have that within us, and the second we tap in, it's beyond game over. So that they're they've always been terrified of us waking up, and that's why they do everything they can to keep us from doing that. But we're at a point now where it's happening and they can't stop it, and they know that, but they all they know is what they know, and they're going to keep doing what they're going to do, and you don't have to worry about that, because you just let them play out what they're going to do, and you don't have to worry about it because they don't have any real power. They have to just manipulate you into feeding them in the system. So it all really comes down to, are you gonna be a slave, or are you gonna be a sovereign being? Are you gonna be asleep, or are you gonna be awake? Are you gonna live in love, or are you gonna live in fear?
Whew.
It's one or the other. It comes down to, you got to make a choice, and it's one or the other, and it's your decision. And it's like, what are you gonna do?
Well, I just got tingles. In fact, I got tingles a bunch of times when you've been talking, and that is my body's resonance message to me, to my intellectual self, that this is a good talk that we're having. And what's interesting is that we've talked for an hour and a half, uh,
Yeah.
and, and I haven't even asked you any of the questions that I'd prepared. So I want to have you back on
uh,
because I know you have a lot more to say, and you're just going to broaden and deepen what you've already laid out, which is this beautiful foundation of living in the love energy. And you obviously are a well-researched um, person, and you've gone on
Ooh.
this incredible journey. It's not like you don't know what you're talking about when you're saying this is, we're talking about awakening, because we
Mm,
see that you were asleep in the dream,
yeah.
as you call it, because I've heard you
Yeah.
talk about this before, being asleep in the dream, and then you
Hmm.
awakened in the dream, which we call the world, but which is a
Hmm.
dream world that has been set up for us. And you
Yep.
also gave us the metaphor in this talk about it being like a movie, which is a good metaphor for people, because we all understand what a movie is. So if
Right.
we look at this as a movie that we're trying to wake up from, because we believe that we were characters in this movie and it was all very important and very real, then
Mm.
then uh, then we're able to language is of course a product of the matrix, so language is always
Right.
difficult
It's
to it's
hard to.
difficult to pin down these things. You've
It
talked about
is.
this
It
too.
is. It's
Talked
like
about
I'm
this
trying to
too.
find the right words. I know what I want to say, but it's hard to like
It,
translate that sometimes.
just recently you were talking about this on another podcast, on your own podcast,
Hmm.
maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. You're talking about how, or 2 months ago, about how language is uh it's actually in the way of communication.
Right. Right.
So, but anyway, so the best I can talk about it is that when we awaken in the dream, as you call it, then we'll see and feel, more importantly, we'll feel our true selves. So I
Mm,
want to have you back on to talk more down the road. I know you have a lot to do. You're doing amazing work on Journey to Truth podcast,
thank
just
you.
totally dismantling the matrix week after week after week. It's unbelievable. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
You have such a great
I
guest.
hope so. I hope we're making an impact. Thank you.
I mean, I've learned so much from your podcasts. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I love the relationship that you have sort of on screen between you and Tyler, where you're just in the background with the love energy, and Tyler's like, boom, all these questions to these really deeply researched people who've lived incredible lives, and he's asking us
Yeah.
both to go back there with the love energy, and you're holding both. You're holding
Chime in once in a while.
and
Yeah.
you chime in once in a while, but it's like you've got that strong love energy, and you're the example. You're the example of where
Mm.
we're going. Once we get all this information out of the way and we learned it all, then we'll be like, oh yeah, Aaron was always there. He was always there.
I don't know.
He no, but this is good. This is what we need. We don't need to go anywhere. We just need to be like a tree and be in the love
Mm,
energy, right?
right, right. It's not about doing. It's about being. And then when you do, you're coming from the being energy, but you're not doing, it's like you're not doing to get something. You're doing because you already are
Mm,
perfect and complete. And then
mm.
you're doing out of that love energy rather than like, I mean, it goes back to like trying to get love rather than coming from love, kind of.
Right, right, right. So
You're
like
not
when
doing because you're trying to get something and be complete and be whole. You're already that. You're realizing that, and then you're doing out of that energy, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah,
Um,
like when an oak tree makes an acorn, it's not doing it to just go, "Hey, look, I made an acorn. I'm pretty good, aren't I?" It's
right.
just making an
Don't you
acorn.
think I'm good? Am I good enough?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just doing its thing.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Just like so, when you're doing your podcast, you're doing your thing.
Hmm. Yep.
Planting some
Thank
seeds.
you.
We'll just call them acorns, but whatever.
Right.
So
Right.
Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait to have you back on down the road. And but like I said, I know you're super busy, so
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like try to get you back on in 5 minutes. But down the road, I'm gonna ask you to come back on and talk about the Law of One, because I want to ask you about the
Ooh,
Law of One because I know
love
you've
the law of one.
deeply researched
Yes.
on that, and a lot of people
Yep.
aren't. They don't even know what it is, which is
Oh yeah.
understandable in the Matrix because
Right.
that stuff's suppressed. And I want to ask
Mhm.
you about where we should put our focus during the transition. I know that's going to be an amazing interview too. So thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been so amazing, man. Thank you so much. I'm honored.
Well, yeah, and we're honored to have the tree known as Aaron Kuhn just sitting there broadcasting his love energy out to the whole universe. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your energy.
Oh, that means so much, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And same to you. Absolutely.
Great, man. Well, till next time, this is Jock Doubleday for Transition to New Terra podcast, wishing everyone an awakening in the dream.
Yes.